Here I am, climbing up, feeling great, getting love. Here I go, risk it all, be worth it now, and that's for sure. Watch me as I rock a team.
All right, here we are. Fight Talk Down Under, episode 8. My name, of course, is Dan Meehan. I'm from Fight News Australia, and my co-host is featherweight superstar, Lockjaw Justin Van Heerden. How are you, mate?
Yeah, doing pretty good considering a day filled with some technological hiccups across the board. And like you and I were just talking about before, we're both having some technical difficulties with some technology. So hopefully it stays good and we can smash out our episode.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a bumpy road to get to this episode. We again suffered from some feral children last night. So and tonight we're having some technical difficulties. So hopefully we can get through the hour without too many issues, and have a bit of fun along the way.
Yep.
Now we got a bit to cover. We'll probably start with the UFC on this one. On the weekend, the Anzacs were represented by New Zealand's Kai Kara France, who had a incredible performance really against Askar Askarov, and it has to be said here, we've got a little bit of egg on our face. We were both probably a little bit negative about this matchup for Kai in episode 7, but he rose to the challenge after a pretty rocky first round. He found Askar Askarov on his back, and from there he did a lot of damage in the second round, and had a close third round, but managed to pull out a unanimous decision win. So what do you think of Kai Kara France's performance from the weekend?
I got to admit, when I was watching that first round, I was kind of like, oh no. I was a bit stressed for the guy. I was a bit worried. I thought it's a wrap. He's got the back, and you see the control that Askar had, and how tight he was, and how he kept trying to fish that arm through, and he would switch sides, and I was like, oh man, it's a matter of time, and then it's a wrap. But Kai stayed disciplined and did what he did. Round 2, which you saw what the fight shift, and Kai was able to do what he does and land and do some good work on the feet. And there's a few times there where I thought, oh, he's gonna pounce on this and put him away, because I think he hurt him a few times. But Kai showed that he was just disciplined and patient, and kind of, you could hear Eugene yelling out, telling him to kind of like just wait and not push in too much, because even if he did blitz in and there was a possibility that he was going to land those extra shots and put him away, there's always the risk that you might land one or two, he grabs a hold of you, and then he can just chill and recover and control you and just kind of ride out until to make it to that third round. And even though he probably won't be doing as much damage, in the eyes of the judges, he still controls you for however long he had a hold of you. So in their eyes, they're going to be looking at going, okay, well, he still controlled, he had control, he was in the dominant position. And then again, it kind of doesn't look good despite the damage that you did. It's the lasting impression. And then you go into a third round, which you could have finished the fight in the second round, So it was a weird spot for him to be in. He couldn't just rush in. If it was anyone else, like any other sort of fighter, you would be able to, you'd be able to just rush in, because they're not going to shoot some crazy takedown chain and take you down and put you on your back and control you. And I thought the third round obviously was still a close round, but yeah, you can see where Kai did more than Askar. Askar was really just looking to engage with the wrestling and really just hold on and grind it out, because I think he was buzzed in that second round. I think he took a lot of damage, like you said. I think he ate some hard shots, and the guy kind of looked like a deer in headlights a bit in the third round, but still made it a close round. So yeah, it was good to see Kai get the win, and now it looks like he's cemented himself the next title shot. So it's interesting movement there, and a good place for the Anzac fighters again now, taking another step forward like that.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned there, Kai seems to be next in line there. I think there's been talk of a fourth fight between Figgy and Brandon Moreno, but I don't know how many times those two can fight each other. I know it's 1-1-1, but surely they can't do 4 in a row. But following the fight, anyway, Figueiredo has taken to social media and called Kai Kara France out. Which is. I guess that speaks to the momentum that Kai has at the moment. He's obviously got the Garbrandt win under his belt. He's just beaten Askarov, and now the champion's calling him out. So, it looks like provided that Figueiredo gets his way, then Kai will be next in line. So that's huge for City Kickboxing and for Anzac MMA.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think, yeah, Figgy said some more stuff today. I saw that he asked Dana White to skip over Marino and give the fight to Kai because he took offense to some stuff that Marino's team have been doing. I think they've been making some memes of him putting his face on a monkey's body or a monkey's face on his body, or I don't know, something like that. And he's taken offense to it. As far as trash talk goes and stuff that's been said, it's probably on the lighter side of things when you see some of the other shit that people are saying. But yeah, I don't know. I can understand though. The dude's frustrated. He probably doesn't want to fight Marino for a full time in a row. Even if he's confident he can beat him or whatever. It's like, man, how many times can you prepare for the same bloke? Like, I honestly, from a fan point of view, I'd watch them fight again, no doubt. It's been crazy watching their fights. Like, take that second fight out of it when Marino just destroyed him. The first fight and the third fight, close fights. So and entertaining too. There wasn't like any boring parts of those fights. So yeah, so part of me is like, all right, give Kai a shot, but part of me is like, oh, we need them to do it one more time to get a definitive end to it. But Marino's taken offense to some lighthearted trash talk, I'd say, and doesn't want the fight with Marino. He wants to give it to Kai, and I'm all for that if that's going to give Kai a title shot. On the topic of trash talk, though, real quick, as everyone knows, I'm fighting May 7th on the Gold Coast. Alan Philpott, if you're listening, you can say whatever you want to me. Go for gold. If you talk about my family or you talk about my kid, I'm going to break your fucking jaw. Get that in your head. Thought I'd get that out there.
There you go. He's laid down the law there, lockjaw of Justin Van Heerden. It's has there been a bit of back and forth with you guys, sort of outside of the inbox?
There's a little bit when he was like doing his usual thing on social media. He was talking about no one wants to fight him, blah 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 blah. Well, now you got to fight. Now there is a featherweight that's got to fight against you. So you can't say no one wants to fight you. So now I mean, it's all part of it, the old trash talk and stuff like that. But the last guy that's, decided to take it a bit too far and talk about my kid, talk about my family and stuff like that. Look what I did to him. I went to his hometown and beat the shit out of him for 3 rounds. So, that's the only outcome if you want to take it to that point. Like, I'm fair game because obviously you're fighting me, whatever. And I can bring the banter and the trash talk just as good as anyone. And I'm the meme majesty, just like Izzy says. I'm right up there. It's like Izzy and me. We're fighting for #1 meme maker in MMA right now. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, but just keep my kid's name out of your mouth.
There you go. He's been warned. And for those who didn't know, May 7th on the Gold Coast, Eternal 6? No, I've forgotten the number. But Justin Van Heerden versus Alan Philpott. So it's going to be it's going to be a fun one. And actually, while we're on the local scene, we may as well sort of cover off a couple of things here. We last week we did mention Kevin Gisset, who's the name we threw out was Matt Myers, but it's actually David Francis at Eternal 65. So I thought we'd just cover that one off, just for anyone. I know everyone was hanging out for the conclusion to that conversation. So David Francis is the. Is the opponent, and of course we'll be touching on that one, and I think it'll be around episode 12. We'll be previewing Eternal 65. We'll get stuck right into that one, but from this weekend just past, Rogue MMA down here in Melbourne, it was the main event was Sem Kakembo versus Rafael Vilches. So obviously a fun matchup on paper, and Kakembo, he's looked pretty good. He's improved to 3-0. He's got the win over Rafael. So what do you think of Sem and the fight with Rafael?
Yeah, it was a good fight. It was always going to be interesting to see what happened on the striking portion of things. Rafael was actually an old teammate of mine from my previous gym at Southside. Very credentialed striker, got a Muay Thai background, kickboxing, boxing, so striking's very, very handy. His wrestling and grappling's come like a tremendous way. It's obviously the part of his game that he's trying to improve and keep improving on. And obviously, on the feet, when the fight was on the feet, that portion of the fight, was competitive, and it was a striker's delight, and it was beautiful to watch. And then obviously Kakembo adjusted in the second round, got the takedown, and ultimately won by rear naked choke. So yeah, he used to fight at bantamweight when he was an amateur. Now he's a pro. He's fighting at featherweight. I'm liking what I'm seeing in so far. Obviously, he fought on the same night as me on the last Hex show, and he kind of looked looked the goods in that fight as well. He was kind of, just doing his thing, flowing real well. Looks like he's getting more and more comfortable in there. He made some adjustments in that fight as well because the guy he fought was tough as, and just kept coming forward. So, and now obviously he's backed it up and fought on Rogue, and he's beat Rafael. So now, it's interesting to see where he's moving forward. I think, he's got a lot of momentum now, and he's definitely exciting to watch. The guy puts on a show when he fights. So I like watching the guy fight. So I'm all in with him being at featherweight and putting on exciting fights.
Yeah, he's definitely making a name for himself, doesn't he? He looks right at home in the cage to me. Like he always looks so just kind of composed and just like he's he's meant to be there. Another day in the office, which is for someone early in their career is it's a pretty good sign if someone's got that sort of that sort of composure early on. So I don't know. What do you reckon what's your read on Kikembo? What do you reckon the potential is there?
Yeah, he's definitely talented, man. The dude's got potential to go a long, long way in this game, and it looks like they're handling things the right way. That they're doing it the right way. They're not looking to like push him into some crazy stuff straight away. Like they're built even through his amateur career, they were like it's a slow build, and now since he's gone pro and the fights he's had already, it's been good fights, and the matchups have been picked really well. Like it's not like they've given him. It's not like they've just fed him like a bunch of easy fights. Like the fights are tough fights for him, but they're definitely fights where it's like there's enough danger that you kind of have to be like, oh shit, I got to be on my game, but also very winnable for someone like him with his style and the ability that he has. So, I like what they're doing. I like how they're approaching it, and he's got a good team behind him. He trains at Absolute. Trains alongside guys like Karnoff, Lee, Jack Jenkins. He's got some good training partners, good coaches behind him. So yeah, he's definitely got the potential to go far, and seeing the guy's demeanor and stuff, like when he's at these fight shows and stuff like that, it's like you said, he looks comfortable, looks focused, and just gets in there, does his thing, and gets out.
Yeah, and Absolute MMA is about as good as it gets down here in Melbourne in terms of just the depth of their fight team, and like you say, it looks like they're kind of just building him up gradually. So yeah, it's going to be a fun watch with Sam Kikembo. I think there's some real potential there for my money anyway. But also on the local scene this weekend, we've got Proving Grounds up on the Gold Coast as well, I think. So
yep.
Yeah, I know you're all across the Queensland fight scene. So what should we look out for at Proving Grounds this weekend?
Yeah, there's a couple. Obviously, it's a couple good fights on that card, and what I've seen so far, what they're doing with Proving Grounds, obviously they're building it up. So they're giving these amateurs and some of these fighters a chance to build up some experience before ultimately they either go pro or fight on like an undercard on these eternal shows that are like getting so much bigger now in the stadium, packed out crowds. I think I saw something today that the last eternal event they had their highest gate and highest attendance. So that's good to see, and that shows you like where it's built to now. So for Proving Grounds to be the sort of platform now that the fighters can build themselves up before they fight on that eternal card, and then eventually start going pro, and you go from there. I think it's a really cool thing. So this weekend, there's two fights for me that really stick out with some talented fighters that I can see, being part of a bright future for Australian MMA. So the first fight, it's a women's flyweight fight. You got Alessandra Inacio taking on one of my teammates, Amina Hedaya. So the fight's taking place at flyweight. Amina's stepped up on a week's notice to take the fight. She just fought 2 weeks ago on a show on Diamondback in Adelaide, where she was where she won a unanimous decision there. So she's come out of that healthy and decided to take this fight and jump in. Inacio is a talented jiu-jitsu specialist. She's a purple belt jiu-jitsu. Her grappling. Her previous fight, her last fight, she fought on Eternal, and I think it was Eternal. Yeah, it was Eternal. And she put on a show, and was just, her whole demeanor. She came out relaxed. She was like dancing out to the cage, dancing after the fight. Was able to use her grappling and ultimately, just get on top and do what you expect a purple belt to do to someone who's potentially not on that same level of grappling in that capacity. So it makes this an interesting matchup. Obviously. Amina's training with us at Freestyle, so she trains under Joe, trains under Volk, trains alongside some good people. So like, which she's obviously looking to be well rounded. She's got a really good striking background at boxing, kickboxing, stuff like that. Has been there already when she came to freestyle, but like across the board, her game's evolved. So from a fighting point of view, it's an interesting matchup for me because it's a classic striker versus grappler matchup on paper. But from what I've seen from both girls, their games in the other avenue, their weak points, as you call it, or the part where they lack in their game, have both elevated. So I'm going to be interested to see how that goes. So obviously, I'm going to back my team. I don't want to see her win, but at the same time, Alessandra's no joke, and she's got the capacity to end the fight as soon as she gets a hold of people. So yeah, it's one of those fights where it's kind of like you're going to be on edge because you're going to be like, as soon as she gets a hold of her, what's going to happen? And then if Amina's like pressing her up against cage, landing heavy shots, what's going to happen there? What's the adjustments that they're going to make? So that's one I'm looking forward to. The other fights, the main event, they've done really well here. So Cam and Robin, well, it's Robin's done really well to match this fight. Jaden Dalrymple from Mackay MMA is taking on Daz Kalovos from Bunchu. So Jaden's 3-1 in MMA, coming off a loss in his last fight on one of the Eternal shows. He fought Alistair Boulders, and looked the goods in that fight. Alistair was able to adjust and caught him with a knee off the clinch and put him away. And then you've got Daz Kalovos, who's 3-0 in MMA at the moment. Guy's got a good Muay Thai background, trains at Bunchu. He's stepped into the MMA world now, and he's looked the goods since he's been in the cage. He's obviously got Daniel Almeida that's helping him with the MMA and wrestling side of things and jiu-jitsu side of things. But then he's got Wayne and Angie Parr that are coaching him with the stand-up. So it's a dynamite combination, and we've seen these Bunchu fighters come out and do quite well so far. So whatever they're doing up there, it seems to be working. Jaden's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. He's very well rounded. Trains under David Garnham up in Mackay, as I said. So very experienced. Dave's one of the pioneers of Australian MMA. He's my first MMA coach. Fun fact there, if people might not know. But the lockjaw came from humble beginnings in Mackay in North Queensland. So this fight's going to be a cracker. They've done well on paper. This fight matches up amazingly. You got two guys who are similar experience, two guys who've well-rounded. Both guys, pack some power. Both guys look for finishes. So yeah, that's going to be a crazy fight to watch. And both guys as well seem to have composure of seasoned pros when you see them in there. They're early into their fight careers and their amateur careers in that capacity, but both of them look super composed when they're out there. And I've had the pleasure of sharing the mats with Jaden early on before he even started fighting, and I watched that kid develop and grow and build and just keep getting better and better. As a young kid when he come into the gym up there, and then now he's grown into this like young, confident guy that's just coming out here and putting on amazing fights. Even though he didn't get the result in his last fight, up until he got caught with that knee, it was not looking good for Alistair. So if you're wondering what fights you need to be tuning in for and thinking if you need to start getting behind some of these amateurs, definitely start watching these shows, because you're seeing these kids come out and put on shows like they're seasoned professionals. And that's what we want to see. So that's another fight that you want to keep an eye out for.
Absolutely, there you go. And it's going to be an interesting watch with Bunchu. Obviously, their MMA program is relatively recent, and guys like Kolovos coming through, and like you say, they're sort of looking the goods early on. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. Obviously, with the Muay Thai side of things is certainly well catered over there, and the MMA team is growing by the day. So it's going to be a fun watch as well. But yeah, Jaden Dalrymple is obviously a likely type as well. So that's going to be, like you say, that's a brilliant matchup for for the top of an amateur card. That could be. That wouldn't look out of place on an Eternal show, like a full Eternal show. So, it's some good matchmaking there. It's definitely worth a watch.
100%.
All right, now we'll head offshore now. On the weekend, we of course, as we previewed last week, John Wayne Parr fought for the final time in one championship, and unfortunately, it didn't go his way. It was pretty heartbreaking, really, for most combat sports fans. For those who don't know, John Wayne Parr was stuck on 99 wins in Muay Thai, and in his last fight, he was going for number 100. He took on Edward Folayang, who's a former MMA champion, this time under Muay Thai rules. And unfortunately, he's come up short. He got put down in the second round, I think, and he's just. He wasn't really able to sort of make it back up. He made it up, but he wasn't able to sort of turn the fight around really from there. He hurt Folayang in the last minute there, but wasn't able to put him away. And unfortunately he's walked away on the wrong end of the decision. So what did you make of John Wayne Parr's performance?
Oh man, hit me right in the feels there, man. I wanted to see that dude win and get that 100 wins and then just sail off, but. Yeah, obviously, it was not the desired outcome. I still feel like like you said, like he said in the lead up when he spoke to you, like he's that old guy in the sport now, and you're kind of like, man, what happened? But like he said himself, you got to be wary of someone who's old and still fighting in a young man's game. And man, there was moments in that fight where he still showed that he's John Wayne Parr and he's a 10-time world champion in Muay Thai. And like you said towards the end there, it looked like he was going to do it. It looked like he was going to get it, but just didn't go his way, unfortunately. But still crazy to think that guy was going for his 100th win, but he's already had like north of 100 fights over this time, and he's won multiple world titles, and we're still watching him fight. Now I remember like I started watching John Wayne Parr when I was a kid, and then I really started seeing the support and stuff increase again when he was on the the Contender, I think it was just called the Contender.
Contender Asia.
Yeah, Contender Asia or whatever. And he fought Yodson Clay on that as well. So, the guy's he's been around, and he's just out here just laying the pathway for these young up and coming fighters. And now he's like we said with Tszyu starting to dip their toe in the MMA world. Who knows what's going to happen? We're going to see him sort of branch out now into that coaching capacity, and there's some things ahead for the guy, but damn, I really wanted to see him get that 100th win. Who knows? Is he really retired? This isn't his first time retiring.
Yeah, he's had a few attempts. So,
part of me is like, okay, he's decided he's done, and I love when fighters can do that themselves. But part of me is just like, man, get another cage Muay Thai card going and fight someone on that and bash him, get that 100th win, and then we're done.
You know what? I think I'll just about put my hand up just to get in the cage and just let him bash me to get number 100. There you go.
I feel that. I feel like
I just want him to get it that badly. Really, it was in that last minute, I was just hoping he was going to get it over the line. That would have been just a fairy tale thing. But
100%. If he'd have head kicked old mate and put his head into the front row, I would have been stoked.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you say, it was obviously a heartbreaking scene. There was tears in the cage afterwards. He left his gloves behind. And actually, I did put it to him when in my interview. For those who haven't watched it, it's on the Fight News Australia YouTube channel. But I did put it to him. I said, in the event that you don't win, would you be tempted to come back for number 100? And to be honest, it wasn't an emphatic answer. So obviously, this is a guy who just loves fighting. He loves everything about it, and obviously just Father Time has caught up with him there, and obviously the hip issues and things like that. But I think he's one of those guys, if he had it his way, he would just fight forever. So,
100%.
You couldn't put it past him, but, it really is time. Like, he looked... It looks off the pace, he kind of looked like he was struggling to pull the trigger at times. We've seen it with fighters as they get older. They have trouble, just keeping up and throwing punches and landing punches when they need to. And probably, particularly in the early part of the fight, he looked a little bit off the pace. So, Father Time is, as he said himself, is undefeated and. But what a career. Like you say, 10 Muay Thai world titles. There's 134 fights in the end in Muay Thai, 14 fights in boxing, including a national title. Just first ballot Hall of Fame. I don't even know if we have a Hall of Fame here in Australia, but we should probably create one to put John Wayne Parr in there because what a career. And, I don't think, he's lost any sort of shine through a performance like that.
But the other thing to keep in mind is obviously, the guy, like we know he had a hip replacement and all that sort of stuff, but the guy's hardly going to come out and be like, oh, nah, actually, you know what? My body's actually more destroyed and I've got a bunch of things that I'm struggling with. Like he's never been that type of guy. If you followed along in his career, I'm sure he fought completely injured lots of times. So who knows, like you said, who knows what the guy, like, who knows what the guy's really got going on, obviously his hip, so he got a hip surgery, got a hip replacement, that got sorted. But like, that the guy's, who knows, man, the guy's hands have been broken so many times over the years. He's had so many injuries. You've seen how many times that guy's had stitches and stuff like that. Ultimately the guy, could have been struggling with a lot more that he's just not decided to bring out into the public eye. So who knows? So to still get in there and get after it and try and go for it, it's just, it's crazy to see. And yeah, I'm stoked that it was 2022 and we still got to see John Wayne Parr jump in and fight.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a privilege to see. Anytime you get to see someone like that in the cage, regardless of sort of how long in the tooth they are or what the situation is. But it was a privilege to see him in the cage one last time, and we wish him well in retirement. And he's got, he's got, like you say, he's got plenty of work to do with his gym. His kids are competing. They've got they're building an MMA team there. So his knowledge and experience and his character isn't going to be lost to the sport. So that's certainly a positive there. But for his opponent, Edward Foley-Young, for his part, actually, I do have to say, I think I might have said in last week's episode that Foley-Young's 41 years old. He's actually 37, so apologies to Edward Foley-Young. So he's not as old as I thought. So obviously, Foley-Young, he like everyone else, he probably in the MMA community, he probably listens to this podcast. So apologies, Edward.
100%.
Yeah, but he looked good in the fight. Foley-Young, he's had his problems in MMA. I think he's 1-6 in his last 7 starts. But he looked good in the fight. He looked much younger, much sharper. It felt like he could fight with a little bit more freedom in Muay Thai. Like, he's obviously from a striking background himself, and he looked pretty good. I don't mind the look of him in Muay Thai. So I'd be happy to see him fight again. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'd be happy to see him stay in the striking only side of things, in the Super Series or whatever they call it with the little gloves, or even in the straight kickboxing stuff that they got going, or whatever it might be. Yeah, I think like you're spot on there. He was wasn't worried about getting taken down, so he could just open up a bit more and have a bit more fun and flow on a bit more. So, I think he can still. There's some dope matchups you could do for him in that capacity of things, and you could still be very entertaining and put on some good fights. So yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for one championship sort of cashing in on that and doing something like that. Just don't match him with Nicky Holzkin. We don't need to see that.
Yeah, well, Nicky Holzkin got stopped on the card actually as well. He, so that was a bit of a shocker because that guy's a gun. But Nicky Holzkin's probably a bridge too far. But there's certainly some fun matchups in the striking realm for Edward Foley-Young. So that'd be that'd be fun. But actually, while we're talking about one. I love one championship, right? I've made no secret of this on this podcast, but we saw another 46-year-old fighting on that card. I don't know if you watched the whole one championship card, but Yoshihiro Akiyama fought Shinya Aoki. He's obviously a former UFC veteran, Akiyama. And we've talked about this before, right? But and I don't want to harp on about it too much, but you can't tell me that Yoshihiro Akiyama is pissed into a cup before that fight. There, I said it.
He is the most jacked and most tanned 46-year-old in MMA. I'll tell you that. There's something going on there.
Holy moly!
They call him Sexy Armor for a reason. That dude, I don't know, but he looks the goods. Like, I'm 28. That dude looks better than me. Like, if I was in a room with him and we were taking a photo, and they were like, "All right, we're taking a photo after the session," I'm keeping my shirt on. Fuck that. That guy, I don't know. He's got something going on. He looks the goods. Yeah.
Oh, did he ever? That is a 40. We thought Bibiano Fernandez looked huge in his fight against John Lineker, but Yoshihiro Akiyama looked like he was about to pop. He was so jacked. It was out of control.
He's like Yoel Romero. It's like Yoel Romero jacked. Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, that was unreal. He hasn't gotten any less sexy since his UFC tenure, that's for sure. And he picked up a big win over Aoki as well. There was clearly a size difference between the two of them. We know Akiyama's a former middleweight, and Aoki sort of fights around lightweight normally, but there was definitely a size difference. So, but it was still an upset. Aoki's a title contender in one, and Akiyama's, he's a legend, but he's 46 years old, so he's mostly
old as
novelty
shit.
fights. But yeah, that was on my mind through that whole fight there. But yeah, there you go. One championship. It's always a spectacle. Drug testing or no drug testing. It's it's always fun to watch.
100%. And just real quick before we move on from that, also, if people didn't see it, go and do yourself a favor and Google the photo of Rod Tang lifting up DJ in the cage. That is one day. I want someone to look at me the way Rod Tang looks at Demetrius Johnson. It was quite nice.
bit of broke back there, was it?
Yeah, I don't know. It was a strange scene. Like even Demetrius after the fight and it was weird. The whole thing was just weird. Like we talked about the PFL contract picking ceremony being weird. The post-fight situation after that fight was just super weird. So if you haven't seen it, go look at it.
I guess it was a bit of a weird concept, wasn't it? The mixed rules sort of thing that they were doing with Demetrius and Rod Tang, and I guess it kind of played out as you'd expect. Demetrius kind of weathered the storm in the first round, and then pretty much took him down and choked him in the second when it changed to MMA rules. But they're not afraid to try something different in one championship.
No, 100%. And I will give Rod Tang credit, man. He looked good. Even when he was like he knew what he was doing. It wasn't like he was just panicking. He was fighting the arm. He was pulling it over his head. He was trying to do all the right things. Obviously, the skill discrepancy was too big, but he was doing some things. So the guy's obviously, doing some stuff in the MMA capacity.
Yeah, I believe Rod Tang's been training for a transition over to MMA for a while now. So he should have some skills there. But obviously, he's up against one of the greats, in MMA circles. So it was obviously going to be a bridge too far, really, in an MMA capacity. But it's going to be interesting to see if Rod Tang does actually make a permanent move over, because he's exciting to watch. I'm tuning in to watch that guy lace up the gloves. I don't care what rule set it is. So yeah,
100%
to watch. Now, while we're overseas, we'll probably touch on boxing here. We had a couple of Australian representatives overseas. First of all, Ebony Bridges is the newest Australian world boxing champion. She's won the IBF world title over Maria Cecilia Roman on the weekend. So it's only her 9th fight. She's beaten Roman, who's was I think in her 7th or 8th defence. I think she's held the title for around 5 years. So. A lot is said about Ebony Bridges, right? Obviously, there's the social media and the weigh-ins, and everyone laughs about like Eddie Hearn trying to direct his gaze elsewhere while she weighs in and that sort of thing. But she can really fight. Like she's shown on the weekend, she's won a world title and she's not afraid to scrap. She came up against someone who was probably a more experienced boxer and probably a little bit more skilled in terms of boxing. But she's not afraid to make it ugly and to throw down and scrap. And she's done a great job in winning the world title. So did you catch Ebony's fight from the weekend?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people wrote her off going into this fight. I saw a bunch of stuff where people, like boxing analysts specifically, were kind of like, oh, well, this is going to be another defense for the champ and she's just going to do what she does and what she's been able to do. But yeah, I think you're spot on there. She made it a dogfight. She made it gritty and just got after it. So, and that's, at the end of the day, if someone's more skilled, more experienced, but they're just not willing or able to, fight through someone who's making it a dogfight and just getting after it and willing to stand in the fire and get after it, then eventually you're going to see them, not be able to hang with that and they're going to crumble. And that's kind of what you saw there. She was able to just to make it, take the fight and put it into an avenue where it was her world and like she could find the success. And, we saw the champ kind of look confused and kind of, there's a few moments there where you're kind of like, where you saw her kind of freeze up a little bit and then start wearing some shots. And it was it's just the case of, just making it an ugly fight. That was another one of those fights where if if the fight looked like it was technical and like super technical, and there was a lot of like work from range, or then you'd be going, okay, well, the champion's just kind of just using her boxing ability and kind of just point fighting her way to a win, and kind of just doing what she does. But that's not what you saw there. You saw a scrap, so it was cool to watch.
Absolutely, and she's kind of, as I sort of touched on there, she's kind of been seen as a little bit of a sideshow. I think I know there's always questions when someone like Ebony, who sort of has the blonde hair and the the physique and all that sort of stuff, gets signed to a promoter like Eddie Hearn. People sort of say, well, it's just a sideshow. She's there for her looks and that sort of thing. So it was really good to see her pull out the win and really just legitimize herself as a fighter, and kind of step out of this this crap that goes on social media. So huge win for Australian boxing and for Ebony Bridges.
Like you said, another champion. So Australia seems to be, we're just rising up in the combat sports. So we're just going to keep, obviously you got Kambosos, you got Tszyu, you got all these people rising up. There's not just in the MMA capacity as well as the boxing side of things. We're starting to see these Aussies come up and start taking over. You've got someone like Liam Parra, who's on the cusp of a world title shot. You got someone like Isaac Hardman, who's fighting Zarafa. If he beats the winner of that fight, they become a mandatory challenger for a world title. You've got obviously Kambosos, who's the king, going to be defending all his belts against some of these top contenders that you could potentially see. So it's just rising up across the board. So you love to see it.
Absolutely, and Sky Nicholson was in action on the weekend as well. Was also signed to Eddie Hearn. She's only in her second pro fight. She obviously made a name for herself in the Olympics. I think she might have come fourth or something like that. But there was the scene of her sort of missing out on a medal there. But she's shown that she can adapt to the pro ranks, and she picked up her second win on the weekend as well. So it's just another prospect to add to the list. But there's a real movement in Australian boxing at the moment, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, look, like if you're someone who's kind of like not, you haven't been sort of following along with the boxing sort of scene here in Australia, and you're not really sure, I definitely suggest that you start getting involved and start getting amongst it, because there's some talented individuals. And if you're someone who likes the sport, but you kind of went away from it because it kind of did fade a bit and dip away there for a bit, and you're kind of like, whatever, I don't really care. But now's the time to get back involved and start watching some of these fighters. You've got some cracking fights happening here in Australia, and you're gonna keep seeing these people get to a world stage and start doing well. Like it's just a given.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a good time to jump on board, as you say, and obviously one of our brightest stars at the moment is Tszyu. He was in action on the weekend. Against Tyrell Gausha, who's a former Olympian. I think he's unranked at the moment, Gausha, but it's definitely a step up. Like Tszyu's been sort of built up really gradually. Like every fight that he's had has been just a step up in class. There was Dennis Hogan, who was a step up, and then Takeshi Inoue was sort of a step up from Dennis Hogan, and obviously now he's on to Tyrell Gausha, but. He was put down in the first round. Just sort of looked a little bit dicey there. It looked like a little bit of a flash knockdown to me. He looked like he was still sort of alert, but Tszyu, he recovered quickly and managed to push the pace for the rest of the first round, and then from then on he sort of did what Tszyu does. We talked about this off air before we recorded tonight, but he kind of just breaks people down. He just pressure. And Gausha really seemed to fade pretty quickly under the pressure, and so it was a big performance from Tszyu in the end in his US debut, and what did you make of it?
Yeah, when he got cracked in the first round, I was kind of like, oh, this is going to spoil your US debut here, and like we're all over here in Australia hyping up how good Tszyu is, and then he goes over there and he gets dropped in the first round, thinking, oh no, this is not what we want. But like you said, he adjusted real well, was able to come back, and then he just showed how good he is, and just showed how disciplined he is and how reserved he is, and ultimately showed his IQ when it comes to the sport of boxing is very high. Obviously, he's always going to have big expectations when he fights moving forward, and especially now that he's been introduced to that sort of international and US audience, I'd say. People are going to compare him with his dad, and it's just always just going to be, big shoes for him to fill. But if anything, the guy is showing that he's perfectly capable of doing that. He's yeah, as someone who's a fan of the sport of boxing, he's someone that you definitely need to start getting on board with if you're not on board with already. He's tremendous to watch, and definitely see him winning multiple world titles moving forward, like 100%.
Absolutely, and yeah, I mean, like Terrell Gausha, just to put it into context, he's only had 2 losses on his record, and they were to Erislandy Lara and Erickson Lubin. So it was, this is a guy who knows how to fight. And it was a near disaster in the first round, as you mentioned there. Like that would have just been the worst outcome possible, to just bring this guy over to the US with all this hype, being talked about in the same breath as some of the biggest names in the division, and to see him get stopped in the first round would have just been an absolute nightmare. But he revealed after the fight that he was actually ill, and he had some sort of a respiratory sort of illness, and he had trouble making weight as well. So yeah, it might have maybe potentially explained a bit of the slow start. But I think we probably saw some defensive holes there. He did get cracked a few times, but boxing is a cutthroat sport. If if you take a loss, particularly early in your career, it really can set you back. It's not like MMA where you can just lose a bunch of fights on the come up, and then all you need is to string a few wins together and you're back in the conversation. But in boxing, once you've got a loss or two on your record, it really just sends you tumbling down the rankings. So, if you almost lose, even if you don't lose in boxing, if you get sort of exposed in any sort of way, like getting dropped in the first round, like Tszyu did, people start to ask questions, which is kind of unreal, really. But I guess do you feel like Tszyu's stock would have risen or fallen, or so? Where do you feel like his stock is after the Gausha fight?
Yeah, I feel like the fans, boxing analysts, boxing promoters, everyone involved in the sport of boxing is going to be harsh when it comes to stuff like that. Like you said, the big thing in boxing is they build these fighters up. You want to be undefeated, and just keep building them up. And then eventually, they get into the mix of fighting one of these contenders, and they get in the mix for a title. And, that's sort of how they do it. They've got all the different sort of things with the IBF, the WO, WA, all that sort of shit. So you kind of like, but like you said, if you lose a fight, then it's like, even though you might have just, you lost, okay, you were 17-0, you lost that fight, you're 17-1, you're one of the best boxers on planet Earth. Everyone in the sport just writes you off and just goes, nah, they're done. So yeah, I mean, for the fans he has, like here, and stuff like that, I feel like it's risen again. But definitely, I think that for the US fans and the US sort of boxing community, it's kind of like, yeah, but I guarantee you they'd still be like, well, a bit unsure. So once he fights again, if he comes out there and just starches whoever he's meant to fight and comes in all good, doesn't have any issues with making weight or any problems, I feel like that's going to boost him right back up. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, it's a hard one with boxing. You kind of have to be flawless, and then continue that throughout. Otherwise, people kind of start going, we're not sure. And which is kind of weird, because people forget that, people's accomplishments and credentials leading up into that point, like, it happened to everyone. Everyone was like all in 100%, being like, man, this person's amazing. Then they lose, and then they're kind of like, oh no, man, I knew he was going to lose. He's done. I don't want to hear about that person. It happened to Ali. It happened to Tyson. It happened to everyone. The smart people got out before it happened to them. The Andre Wards, the Floyd Mayweathers, they did it the right way. Andre Ward, I always tell people, if you're a boxer and you're in the sport of boxing and you want to know how you should handle your career, watch what Andre Ward did. Got in there, won 2 world titles, and then he was like 30 and went, I'm done, I'm out, and sailed off into the sunset, and that's it. So, there's if you're going to go down that sport of boxing, which is ruthless, and in and out of the ring, you've got to do some things the right way. Otherwise, it's just going to come back and play you. Which, while we're on that topic, I don't know if you saw the fight between Billy Dibb and Jacob NG. Obviously, Billy Dibb, former IBF featherweight title holder. That fight ended up ending in a silly way, because Billy Dibb went to the Aljamain Sterling School of Acting and decided to pretend like he was hurt after being dropped on his head because he's a fucking moron. How are you going to hit someone after the bell and act like a turkey when they're doing their walk to the ring, get into the ring, and you're doing all that sort of antics and stuff like that? You act like a turkey at the press conference, and then you start getting bashed in the fight and start, trying to do these, I guess you just call them like shitty, dirty tactics. And Jacob, who has fought not only in boxing, the dude used to fight Muay Thai and all sorts. He's a very credentialed combat sports athlete. Just dropped you on your head because you're acting silly, and then you had a little sook and cried about it. So if anyone in the boxing world or boxing sport wants to write anyone off or give someone some shade, throw it at Billy Dibb because he's a moron.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob NG is, he looks a good prospect. He's, he's a showman. He's and he can fight as well. So I think there's some real potential there. But Billy Dibb's a guy who's at the end of his career. Really, I think he's probably 34 or 35. He's a former world champion. So as you mentioned, so people like that, they're never far away from another world title shot. When you're a former champion in boxing, you really just have to come back and reel off a couple of wins, and then you can be. It can be maybe someone at the end of their career or is getting a little bit older is right for the picking. If they get ranked quite easily, and people will pick them out because they've got a name. They're not necessarily that dangerous. Cherry picking is something that happens in boxing. It's just the reality of it.
100%.
I think Billy Dibb recognise that a loss to an up and coming guy like Jacob NG is probably going to scupper any chance that he has of sort of one last payday before he rides off into the sunset. So potentially that was that could be an explanation for what happened there. He's come away. I don't know if was it a DQ in the end. Did it go down as a DQ or
yeah?
I can't remember what the result was. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So he comes away with the win on paper. And he lives to fight another day in terms of contending for titles or for big fights. So unfortunately, that's it's a sad reality in boxing. Some of those situations, and that was no different.
It's unfortunate. And Billy, if you're watching this, because everyone watches Fight Talk Down Under, you're not missing it. I know he's got his notifications turned on. He's subscribed on YouTube. If you're upset about what I said, Billy, just remember you're a boxer. I'm an MMA fighter. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. But yeah, back to Tszyu. I guess just to cover that off. Like, I guess one thing I wanted to cover off was like one of the big questions often posed to an undefeated fighter, as Tszyu is how do they deal with adversity, right? So obviously Tszyu's been dropped in the first round with, as we've mentioned a couple of times there, against Gausha. And for me, he passed with flying colours, like he came up against an Olympian, obviously a guy who knows how to punch you right in the jaw, and he got dropped. That happens in boxing. He's not the first guy to get dropped in the first round, and I'm sure he won't be the last. And for me, he passed with flying colours. So I don't really understand why. Obviously, that maybe there shows some defensive holes in there, but for me, I probably am only even more impressed with Tszyu really after that performance. What do you reckon? Yeah,
I reckon he adjusted beautifully. I mean, obviously, I can speak from experience here. I've been cracked and had to do that myself, and sometimes it's. You've overcome that adversity and you kind of, rally up and get the win or, do the deed. But other times, that doesn't happen. So to see him sort of bounce back and then perform the way he did for the rest of the fight, especially considering, if he was ill and he was really struggling to make weight, that explains why he got, when he did get cracked, he got dropped. Obviously, Gausha can punch. Like the guy can crack. So, I'm super impressed by it. I think that's, the guy's allowed to have an off night. I think, that's the thing with boxing. People are undefeated and people just expect them to be perfect all the time. You're allowed to have an off night. I mean, like we're not sitting here like this. We've all saw the fights, with Tyson Fury and Wilder. We didn't sit there and go, after the fact, well, Tyson got dropped and what if? And, he looked beatable there and he's human. People were just on like, he had an off moment and look, he adjusted and came back. So, for some reason, I just see that with like Australian fighters in boxing and across the board, they're not given that same sort of, I guess, respect or admiration that some of these other people get. And it's a weird thing to see because anyone that's doing the stuff that Tszyu is doing, performing the way he's performing, like you said, he's constantly stepping up in class and just in levels and keeps going, and like you said, this time was a step up in level. the first round, you watch that first round of that fight, you're like, oh, I don't know. Like you're like, holy crap. Okay, is he going to come back? Is he going to bounce back? And he did. And then but people are talking about the fact that he got dropped. I'm seeing a bunch of people like boxing analysts and people talking about the fact that he got dropped in the first round. They're like, oh, there's stuff there that we can, if your future opponents can be able to utilize or whatever the case may be. But they're not talking about the fact that from round 2 onwards, he just bashed the bloke, like picked him apart. Made him look silly. An Olympian. He made an Olympian look silly, and we're not talking about that. Yeah, so it's a weird one for me.
Absolutely, and I guess speaking of stepping up in class, we know that Tszyu was ranked number 1 in the WBO going into this fight. I think he's 3 in the IBF and the WBC from what I've got in my notes there. Unranked in the WBA, which is an interesting one, but we know that he's the mandatory challenger for the WBO title, which is held by Brian Castano, who's rematching with Jamel Charlo. They fought to a split draw last year. I think the likely scenario is that he's going to get stuck in a bit of a logjam there because, like Castano and Charlo are fighting for all the chocolates, right? Charlo has the IBF, WBA, WBC, and the lineal title. Castano's got the WBO, so they're going to unify all the belts. Those two, or one of them is whoever wins the fight. And what tends to happen in that scenario is in boxing, in modern day boxing, it's difficult to hold on to all the titles because all 4 of the major organisations will have their own mandatory challenges. So Tszyu is probably not going to be the top of the heap. He's obviously the mandatory in the WBO, so he might have to continue to bide his time and build his name in the US, but they will have the option. Whoever wins that fight will have the option to fight him or potentially drop the belt. They might even get an extension for unifying all the belts if they want to fight and take a voluntary defense in the meantime. But the winner of that fight is obviously the best fighter in that division at the moment. Do you think Tszyu is ready to match it with someone on that level at this point, or do you think he needs to bide his time for a little bit longer?
I'd like to see him have like maybe 2-3 more fights before you start talking about him fighting one of those guys. And then, but I think if he does the same thing with like that, he has like 3 more fights, takes a step up each time like he has been doing, and then there's no reason to doubt the dude if he can do that and build himself up a bit more. Which that's what it's about, and that's what it seems like him and his team are doing. So I feel like he can definitely you look at the guy, he's super talented. The guy can box. So I'm going to back him with whoever he gets put in there with. But I'd like to see him have a couple more fights and then throw him in the mix there for whether it's for all the belts or one of the belts or whatever the case is. Just get him in there.
Absolutely, he's not shy in sort of calling the names of the champions there, but so far he's been shown to really not be in any rush, and his team's been pretty good at building him up slowly. So there's plenty of good names in the division there for him to keep building his name, and I think it makes sense for him to keep building his name in the US and try and string together some wins. Maybe someone like Austin Trout, who's in that division. He's sort of an older, not old. He's probably in his mid-30s, ex-world champion. That would probably be another step up in class as well, and someone who's probably beatable with a name. So that would probably be a good one. He's had a bit of a back and forth with Tony Harrison. There was sort of talk that the fight might have been close to being signed and then not happening, and then obviously didn't happen. So someone like that would also probably be another step up and another fun one. So hopefully he can get some fights like that, and sort of work his way up. And then potentially, he could probably lure one of the big dogs back to Australia. He's obviously got a huge name value here in Australia, although I did read that he might have earned 7 figures over in the US for fighting Gausha. But obviously, he'd be able to do a big stadium show here in Australia, and they'd be able to offer a competitive purse to one of the champions to come back here to Australia. So it's going to be interesting to see what his next move is.
100%. And if you're going to do, you've got Kambosos who said without a doubt he wants to defend his belts in Australia when he fights. You could do a cracker boxing card. You could do that. You could for sure chuck Tszyu and Kambosos on a similar sort of card, and that's going to sell out. You do that at Marvel Stadium, it's going to pack it out.
Absolutely, and yeah, that's kind of rare in boxing as well. Those sort of world title double headers. They're normally sort of more like tentpole type events where they have they have a big world title at the top of the card, and then the rest is kind of populated with sort of less significant fights. But yeah, it would certainly be probably out of character for boxing to put on a double header like that. But geez, wouldn't that be a mega event? Just Marvel Stadium or something would be incredible.
100%. And it would sell out. 100% it would sell out, and you could fill that card with Australian boxing's talent. Top talents that you got out there, the people we spoke about before, the Jacob NGs, the Liam Parrows. You got these guys that are, that have the good support base here in Australia, that you could get on a card like that, where you have some of these world championship caliber fighters on that are going to, help build it up and rise it up even more. So, I mean, it's a win-win in my books, but as you said, boxing's a weird one, and they don't really sort of do stuff like that, but see what happens.
Absolutely, and the place to find all the analysis of such a card, if it were to happen, would of course be Fight Talk Down Under. We'll be up to episode 50 something by then probably, and the only way to stay up with that is to like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean. Keep an eye on FightNewsAustralia.com as well. Episode 9 is going to be a huge one. We're going to get deep into Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie, which is on next week, and of course we have a training partner of Alex Volkanovski's right here in our ranks. And for those wondering, it's not me; it's actually Justin. So we'll be able to get some real insight into Volkanovski's camp and what we can expect on Fight Night. So that's going to be a fun one. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, obviously. I'm fighting May 7th, like I said earlier. I don't know if I was meant to announce that yet or not, but I don't give a fuck. I do what I want. It's my show, our show. We do what we want. Cam, Soz, but not Soz. So see, there's that. Like you just touched on, Volko's camp wraps up this week, and then he'll be heading out to the US. So he'll be going for another Ruby fighting Korean Zombie. So I'm all hyped about that. I'm excited to see the work that he's done in this camp again, to get put on display. He's going to, I see it finish. Obviously we're going to break it down in detail on our next episode, but yeah, I can see him finishing Zombie and putting on an absolute show, and, getting out there and giving us another memorable post-fight press conference again. Because I don't know if you saw the last one, but it was fucking hilarious.
Absolutely, and yeah, we're looking forward to breaking that one down. And yeah, everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in episode 9.
I gotta watch it, you never know what might stop you. Here I am, climbing up.